Why, hello everybody. So welcome to another review as read. Today we're going to talk about Legend of the Five Rings, Clan War Third Scroll, The Crane by Rhys Sorsby. So, as with always, today's review will go with the good, then the bad, and then a conclusion. So, first a bit of backstory. This book is of course in the Legend of the Five Rings world, which is a card game, famous collectible card game, and also a famous RPG. There was a miniature game for a short while. I don't think it lasted that long. But basically, this whole thing has a long history, and these books and this book too is in one small part of that history. All right, and today's story is about basically the basics of it is about the story of Hoturi, the daimyo of the crane, and after he took over from his father Satsume. All right, and basically that's the story. I can't give you much more, and I'll explain the reason why later. All right. So also another small thing to note that actually, like I said, this is actually in a whole series of books of the world of Rokugan, which is a romanticized version of Japan with monsters and magic and all. And like example, these are the major clans like the crane, and then you have a book on the crab, the lion, and such. All right, and like the mantis. So actually, all the books make up that arc in the Legend of the Five Rings story. But this is just one of them. Basically, when I was a kid, I went to a lot of book fairs, and not being very rich, I only could pick one. So I decided to buy one that's the most samurai like, because I'm still into Bushido and samurais and all. So that was this book. And as a kid, I liked it. But well, let's just go into the good first. The good thing, the writing style. If you like detailed stuff like with Tolkien, you will like the writing style of this book, because he goes into quite some detail. Example, he would say things like the leaves were flowing in the wind, and it was a green of emerald, and the third leaf was brown and dying. So a very detailed kind of writing. If you like that, his Rhys Sorsby's writing in this book at least was fitting to that style. Also, as an introduction to just the crane and the world of Legend of the Five Rings, is also not a horrible book if you want to really read a story and just get an introduction without being bogged down by too much backstory and everything. It's actually not, so that does the job. And sadly to say, that's about all the good things I have to say about the book, because well, let's go into the bad. First things first, as an introduction to the world, there is no map, and the story actually has a so-called a campaign where people are attacking and defending with armies and all. When they say that you attack this castle, that castle, and all that, and you can't picture it. Imagine when this was written in the 90s, there was no internet, there was not much popular internet. How people had to imagine everything. That's how I had to do it even today in the world, because I was not gonna look it up, because I don't play the game. Like I said, I don't play the system. And also, the most major problem for me was it's a romanticized version of Japan, which is just so unrealistic. Also, this is also due to his writing style, because everything's exaggerated. Alright, this romanticized version of Japan where honorable, if you're honorable, you are super honorable. And this part I'm going to talk about now, you can't blame the guy. He probably had restrictions. Everything was too predictable, because all the clans have a characteristics, like the crane or the courtly people with a very impassive face with no emotions and stuff like that. And so, example, the crab, these were these stalwart defensive fighters who were very uncouth and not used to courtly life. So, example, when a crab warrior meets a crane warrior, they had conversation that you actually could predict, I'm not kidding, what happens. And that's why actually, like I said before, I had such a hard time trying to give you a synopsis on the story, because even, trust me, I'll put this like that, and you can pause it, read this, you know nothing about the story, because to tell you the a detailed synopsis, even just a detailed synopsis, will give away the entire story. That's how I would say badly the book was written and planned out. Because actually, I think the whole thing as a whole would probably be a lot better with the whole series of books. But by itself, uh, I mean, as an encapsulate, to be absolutely fair to it, as an encapsulating story, not it does that. But definitely, there's a lot of stuff that's left blank afterwards. What happens and everything like that. But as a story by itself, there is a so-called, how you say, closure. But there's a lot of lingering questions basically. And also the writing style has this thing about, like I say, it's like the author had this very romanticized version of Japan, and he uses a lot of language like perfect and second to none. You know, like his showman strike and his stance was perfect, and he could never have missed. You know, language like that, which is just unrealistic and just really grinds on you after a while, because everything is like the person could do no wrong, yet he did wrong later on in the book. You know, which is, the language just grinds at me. If you just think trying to make this a logical story, it's horrible, because you keep looking back like, didn't he say he had a perfect stance? How come now he's, yeah, that really grinds on me for the writing style. And there were also a lot of Deus Ex Machina moments, you know, where exactly at the perfect time things happen just to move the story, because if they didn't, the story can't move on. So there's a lot of like people who have the most horrendous wounds and somehow they would survive, or at this perfect moment the person managed to step in there, even though, again, I can't give away the story because it's so predictable, so I won't tell you about that. And actually, if you look back at my review as read number one with the Sigma book, the third book in that series, although I love reading that, by the way, just to give away that part of the Sigma series which you talked about. The third book, it has the problem with the third book in that series for battles, because the battle scenes were very detailed. Like I say, he had his perfect showman strike, he struck under and he struck the belly straight, that kind of writing and all. But basically, when it comes to big battles, him and Graham McNeil, Rose Sosby, has the same problem. They basically just go along like infantry here, cavalry here, they charge, and it just goes into individual combats, and the individual combats are repetitive as hell. You know, it's basically showman strike, bend, duck, roll around, stand up, bone grind, fight again, and it gets really tiring really fast. So the battle scenes were long and boring. To be honest, the last battle, I basically skim read it almost. I mean, I looked through again just to make sure I didn't miss anything, but it was tedious. So, conclusion, I think you already know how I feel about the book. I actually liked it as a kid when I was really young. But actually now I remember when I picked up the book, how can I remember nothing about it? It's probably because the story wasn't that good or unique at all. And to say the least, probably I'm not gonna read this again. Even if I do, it will be quite a bit of time. Let's just put it as that. So, there you go. Review of Legend of Five Rings the Crane. Till next word.